In 1825, Britain gave the world its very first passenger railway, a revolutionary invention that connected continents and transformed transportation. Yet today, the nation that pioneered rail travel has fallen spectacularly behind. Spain boasts nearly 4,000 kilometers of high-speed track. France has built 2,800. Japan runs trains at over 300 kilometers an hour through densely populated cities and mountains. Even Switzerland, a country carved by the Alps, has engineered high-speed lines through some of Europe's toughest terrain. Britain's solution: a single 110-kilometer line to the Channel Tunnel, and an infrastructure project so troubled it became the world's most expensive railway per mile. So, what went wrong? How did the birthplace of the passenger railway end up struggling to keep pace with the very nations it once inspired? Let's find out. On September 27, 1825, George Stephenson's locomotive pulled the world's first public passenger train from Darlington to Stockton, carrying 450 people at 24 kilometers per hour. This single event changed human history. Within decades, Britain built the world's most extensive railway network. The British essentially wrote the rulebook on how railways should work. Stephenson's standard gauge became the global standard most of the world still uses today. Fast forward to centuries, and the story looks completely different. Britain now has one of the densest conventional rail networks in Europe, carrying more passengers than France, Italy, or Spain. But when it comes to actual high-speed rail, the network barely exists. Internationally, high-speed rail is defined as new lines capable of speeds of around 250 to 300 kilometers an hour or more. HS1 remains Britain's only true high-speed line. Other intercity routes are mostly upgraded legacy lines, contending with curves, old infrastructure, and frequent stops. Compare this to France, where the TGV has been running since 1981, or Japan, where the Shinkansen began service in 1964. Here's where the excuses begin. Critics of high-speed rail in Britain love to blame geography. The country is too small, they say. The cities are too close together. Too many towns and villages are blocking the way. Britain's population density is often raised as a barrier. But consider Japan, it has far more people per square kilometer and much tougher terrain. So yes, Britain is dense, but not uniquely so. Let's examine these claims. Switzerland, despite its mountains, operates lines reaching 230 kilometers an hour through vast tunnels. Its base tunnels prove that with consistent investment, even the Alps aren't an obstacle. Japan presents an even stronger counterargument. The Tokaido Shinkansen runs through one of the most densely populated corridors on Earth, connecting Tokyo and Osaka. The line crosses rivers, mountains, and urban areas far more challenging than anything in Britain, and they built this in the 1960s. Spain built nearly 4,000 kilometers of high-speed track, the second longest network in the world, despite having a lower population density and significant geographical challenges. Ironically, Britain's smaller size should make high-speed rail easier, not harder. Britain didn't just sit idly by. The nation tried repeatedly and failed spectacularly. The Advanced Passenger Train Project tells you everything you need to know. Developed in the 1970s, the apt was supposed to be Britain's answer to Japan's Shinkansen. It featured pioneering tilting technology to take curves at higher speeds. In 1975, it set a British speed record of 245 kilometers per hour. Everything looked promising. Then British Rail made a catastrophic decision. Facing political pressure, they rushed prototypes into passenger service before solving technical problems. The trains failed. The tilting mechanism had issues. Passengers complained of motion sickness. The media pounced, turning the apt into a national embarrassment. By 1986, the project was dead. The tragedy: the technology worked. The tilting system was later sold to an Italian firm, which refined it for their Pendolino trains. These same trains now operate successfully around the world. In 2002, Britain even bought back Pendolino trains, essentially repurchasing their own technology decades later. Meanwhile, the Intercity 125, a simpler train, became a huge success because it worked reliably. The lesson British officials learned was exactly the wrong one. They concluded that innovation itself was the problem. Then came HS2, Britain's attempt to finally build a proper high-speed network. Proposed in 2009, it promised to connect London to Birmingham, Manchester, and Leeds at 360 kilometers per hour. Journey times would plummet. Regional economies would boom. It all sounded fantastic. When HS2 was first proposed, it was expected to cost around £37.5 billion. But reality hits hard. By 2025, the cost for just Phase 1, London to Birmingham, had ballooned to between £49 and £56 billion for just 225 kilometers of track. HS2's first phase is now estimated to cost £396 million per mile, about 8 times what similar projects cost in France or Spain. Compare this to other countries. France's Tours-Bordeaux TGV line cost £25 million per mile. Spain's Madrid-Galicia line cost the same. Japan built almost half the Hokkaido Shinkansen line through tunnels for just £50 million per mile. The project kept shrinking. In 2021, the eastern leg to Leeds was cancelled. In October 2023, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak scrapped the northern section to Manchester. HS2 now runs only from London to Birmingham. The project, meant to revolutionize British transport, has been reduced to a £50 billion railway connecting just two cities. Part of the cost comes from environmental mitigation and appeasing local opposition. The line requires 32 miles of tunnels and 130 bridges. Many added to quiet objectors rather than for engineering reasons. Every time someone complained, officials made the project more expensive and complex. France builds high-speed lines from both ends at once, meeting in the middle. This lets heavy machinery move on newly laid track. Britain divided HS2 into separate contracts, making coordination nearly impossible and driving up costs. The project has been led by 5 different CEOs and overseen by 6 prime ministers since 2012. Political instability killed any hope of long-term planning. Research from Britain Remade examined over 200 infrastructure projects across 14 countries. The findings are damning. Britain pays twice as much per mile for railways compared to the average of 7 other wealthy European countries. This pattern holds across every type of infrastructure. Everything costs more in Britain. The problem runs deeper than HS2. The nation has created a toxic combination of chronic underfunding, political short-termism, and a culture that empowers every possible objection to delay projects. The irony stinks. 200 years after showing the world what railways could do, British passengers travel on modernized Victorian infrastructure while watching other countries zoom past at 300 kilometers per hour. And here's the kicker. HS1, the only true high-speed line Britain has, was completed on time and under budget in 2007. It proves Britain can build high-speed rail successfully when it commits. But HS1 was an exception. When Sunak cancelled the northern sections of HS2, he promised to redirect £36 billion into Network North. Sounds reliable, until you see what gets lost. Over 33,000 construction workers and 3,500 UK businesses were building HS2. They were developing expertise Britain desperately needs. Spain and France built their networks quickly and cheaply because they maintained consistent construction. Workers move from project to project, retaining skills and improving efficiency. Britain does the opposite. Start a project, cancel it halfway, lose the expertise, then start over at an even higher cost. When you cancel projects, the institutional knowledge vanishes. Geography isn't Britain's problem. Neither is population density, nor land costs. The real barriers are political dysfunction, planning paralysis, and an inability to maintain long-term commitments. The solutions exist, if Britain chooses to implement them. But what do you think? Should the country finally finish HS2 or scrap it entirely and start over? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like and subscribe for more stories about how geography shapes our world.